Defining Duke, an Xbox podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support the show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Salutations, everybody. It is Maddie here today, and welcome to episode 121, I believe, of Defining Duke Ultimate, a Defining Duke supplement. This is a very special one. It's our part one of our Starfield Spoilercast and review discussion. We have assembled an all-star cast for this one. As always, I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Lord Cognito. How are you, sir?
We are here. Ding! The spoiler class for Starfield, man. I'm excited. We got the homies in here. We got my man Randall Thor. We got Gene Park. I'm looking forward for a good discussion. We've had a lot to say about this game, and now we can really unleash, fully without embargoes and all the other things. So I'm excited to talk about this, man. It's a long time coming. So good group assembled.
Absolutely. Gene, as always, welcome. It's great to have you here, man.
Good to finally be here. Nice to find. Yeah, it'll be nice and actually. It's been a while since I've talked about Starfield, but it'll be nice to actually, just be limber and just like not walk around eggshells and just like really get deep into the criticisms and the things we like and the analysis of the ending and all that stuff.
100%. And Rand, my good friend, it's good to be podcasting with you twice in 1 week. I was just on Xbox 2+1, and now here we are talking some Starfield. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. Talking about what might be, I don't know, my game of the year this year, which I wasn't expecting because Cog knows I'm not the biggest fan of Bethesda's games, at least the previous ones. And first time getting to podcast with Gene, so
there we go.
This is pretty exciting.
Wait, really?
Awesome.
That's our first time?
I think so.
Wow, that doesn't make any sense, man. Okay.
Well, the reason we're doing things this way, ladies and gentlemen, you may have noticed, part one, as I said at the top. So what we want to do is make sure that with a game as big as Starfield, like some of our write-ins mentioned people throwing 165 hours and not seeing everything in the game and so on and so forth. I wanted to make this digestible for everyone where we could do something with the main story and the side content and factions into two separate parts. As always, with our review discussion and non-spoiler or review discussion and spoiler cast, we will have a non-spoiler section so that those of you who want to dip your toe in the pool, you can listen. But this episode is going to focus on the main story. So if you're looking for us to talk about factions, side quests, all that stuff, that will be part two at a later date to be determined. But we wanted to do part one just centered around the main story, the companions, that sort of stuff, and dig into that in particular. So gentlemen, it's great to have you here. And let's not delay any further. We're going to have what I would say is one of our more brief non-spoiler conversations, because I speak for all of us when I say we have been navigating these spoilers so much, and there's so much to talk about with Starfield. We need to get it off our chests. So we're not going to be on cracked eggshells long. I want to start with this write-in here from Dick Justice, more of a review-focused question, saying, while not about the story itself, I'd like to hear the Duke's thoughts on how RPG Starfield is in comparison to other older BGS titles. I personally think this is the best they've done yet on the role-playing front since Fallout 3, yet I see many detractors online saying it's less of an RPG than their previous games. And this just doesn't make sense to me. Even with ignoring the much deeper character system, what other BGS games has this many branching storylines? This many quest or class and skill dialogue options, this many options of ways to complete quests. I personally think this game has the most role-playing options out of any Bethesda game, but what do the Dukes think? The Elder Scrolls 6 will be 10 times the size of Skyrim, but will all be handcrafted in just as dense kind of day. That would be lovely. See, I want to get Rand, I want to start off with your thoughts on this one, because you said that you're not big on Bethesda games. So this one spoke to you more. Was it the role-playing options in Starfield that pulls you in? And as someone who, I don't know how deep your history goes with their games. I don't know if you've played every single one of them at least, but do you find the role-playing in Starfield to be better? Was that an enhancement for you to stick around Starfield a bit longer?
This is going to be a weird question for me to answer, because it's been so long since I played a Bethesda game, honestly. I didn't play Fallout 4. And so my last Bethesda experience was probably Skyrim in 2011, with Fallout 3 like a little bit before that. So it's been a long time for me. So it's hard for me to even remember like how I even played through Skyrim. I'm not much of a, when I talk to Jez likes to role play, right? He gets really upset when the characters are too, like your companion characters are like too goody two shoes, right?
Yeah.
That didn't really bother me. Whatever. I don't really role play like that in these games. So like the role playing aspect of Starfield, I would say really didn't particularly matter too much to me, and I was having trouble trying to even remember what it was like, back in Fallout 3 and Skyrim. So I'd rather pass that question off to somebody else, because
Sure.
I just, in my mind, the RPG aspect wasn't one of the reasons why I was playing the game, and it wasn't something I was, trying to get into anyways.
Gene, how about yourself?
I think this is a perfect question for me, because I'm glad that we start this off, because we can start positive. And I think Dick is right, that I think the reason why I was so keen on Starfield was because I did recognize this as a much better role-playing game than Fallout 4 and Skyrim and Fallout 3. I keenly remember the type of characters that I played in Skyrim and Fallout 3, because thanks to Xbox cloud saves and backward compatibility, I can go back to my old characters in 2009, 2010, 2011, and I can see who I was. And then in Fallout 3, I was a press delivery boy, that was a lone wanderer. And in Skyrim, I was a wizard, right? And then in Starfield, you could be so many different things, and that was the amazing thing. I played through Starfield like 4 times. At each 4 times, I was always a different character. The first guy, I was just like a explorer. I was trying to role play as a Constellation character, and the second one, I was like the evil, like bitter, cynical. I guess we can. This is a spoilercast, so I was a bitter, cynical Starborn guy, right?
Yeah.
And then the next 2, I started to lean in towards more pirate side, and then the last one, I was just kind of chilling and just like actually focusing on like the shelter building there. I still call it shelter building, Fallout shelter building. So I think Dick is absolutely right. I think that is what a lot of people are missing. That there is so much flexibility in terms of the role playing, and I was so relieved, because I was really, like Maddie, I was so worried about the direction Bethesda was going with Fallout 4. Right? Yeah. I was like, they're really leaning on action. They're really leaning on more linear storytelling, binary storytelling choices, one way to finish quests. So when I play Starfield, that's where so much of my good vibes came from. I was so relieved that I didn't continue the Fallout 4 school of philosophy. They reverted back to something closer to Skyrim and Oblivion, and that's why I fucking love the game so much, because it was just like, oh, this is classic Bethesda in a space game. That's great.
Now, Cog, how about yourself? I know you're still throwing hours into the game up to this day. So was the role playing a big part of that, sir, as you've dived into New Game Plus?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think for me, there was a disconnect initially, though, because even though I love that I agree with you that I had so much choice as far as how I can play it. I wasn't kind of constricted. I love that aspect, but I was confused on how to role play when it first started, like how to get into the game and what does Starfield want me to do, right? To be successful. And there was a little confusion. And then I think for me, where the RPG really kicked in was I stopped trying to play it like, go everywhere, do everything. And I actually started to play more refined and more like Mass Effect, whereas the quest that I'm currently involved with, if they happen to take me to a locale and then I'm here and I see things, then I'm going to invest and engage with the RPG mechanics that way. And the game became so much enjoyable to me. Because I think the mistake I made, Manny, and maybe, I don't know if you went through this, is that I was in comparison mode playing Starfield too much in the beginning, and it was taking away from my enjoyment of the game. And I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to just go to a random planet and just randomly, engage that way kind of thing? And some cool emergent events happen, but nothing to the extent that I feel like a classic Bethesda game when you play a Skyrim and you look over the mountainside, okay, what's that? If you try to play Starfield like that, it just wasn't as enjoyable to me that way. To me, it's when I really started to stick to the planet, stick to the main hubs, and it was so dense there. It was so much to do. And that's when my enjoyment came in. It just opened the game up for me. Yeah. And to Gene's point, yeah, I really love the trait system. And I think I went Space Scoundrel, and I wanted something with piloting because I realized how much I love being in space and ship combat and things of that nature. But I'm curious for you, Maddie. I know this has been something that you've talked about. Obviously, Fallout veteran, kind of thing. So I know maybe we may share some things. I was thinking.
Also, real quick, you mentioned the skill system. Like there's so much. The skill system takes forever to become God mode, as Manny has said before, right? So you really, really got to be intentional with how you build at the beginning. And I love that. It was like, oh, this is a real RPG where I'm actually building my character first. When you got to build towards piloting first if you want to be a good pilot. You can become a good pilot later. I'm God mode now. Everything's maxed out, right? So like I'm just everything. But at the very beginning, I knew what kind of person I was. I was a pilot first, and I was actually doing ships. So that delivered that sense of like this is feeling like more of a role playing game. Yes, it's an action game. It's you shoot a ton of people, but then that's just part of the game. You gotta shoot people.
Yeah. When it comes to the dialogue, I mean, I first off, I just love how dialogue focused the game really is. It's almost entirely built around talking to people more than anything. And I think as a role-playing game compared to past BGS games, I don't know if this is nostalgia talking. I would say it's on the level of Fallout 3. Fallout 3 is very, very one or two paths to any single quest. And I'm talking dialogue here specifically when I'm thinking role-playing. Like Fallout, you either have your good karma or your bad karma, right? And all the quest endings are built around that system. So there's pretty much one of two ways to play the game. Where Starfield, you have a lot of options. Normally quests have 1 to 2 endings, but where I think Starfield could have eclipsed it is if they made better use of the skill system. That's where like my disappointment lies in some of the role playing, because there's a ton of dialogue, right? Like when you go into the persuasion mini game, you realize they just have, in case you want to do things this way, like 18 to 20 extra lines of dialogue just packed in here. You realize that, wow, if they just shifted their focus of design to more skill checks for personalized builds, like they wouldn't have increased the writing. In fact, they may have even trimmed it. They just would have had to get a little more creative, and it may have added a couple of extra solutions. So I feel like Fallout 3 does do that. It's rare, but you do have those moments where one of your skills kicks in and you're like, oh, that's one way around that objective. And Starfield, on a gameplay level, a lot of its missions outside of like the UC Vanguard reminded me of a Call of Duty campaign. Like you don't have a stealth build. You have missions that are built for stealth. Like you don't find these vents to crawl through and you're like, oh, I discovered this myself. Like they put you on that path. So I think in some sense as an RPG, it's a touch limited. I think it being sandwiched between what I think is one of the best gameplay role-playing games in Cyberpunk and one of the best story role-playing games in Baldur's Gate 3 didn't help it. But I think when you look at the BGS pantheon, it's definitely near the top. And I think it's still impressive. And I do think they do a lot of great things with it. So I would say it's one of the positives of the game. And I get surprised when people try to use the role-playing as a detraction, because one of the things I hear all the time is like, oh, quests don't have multiple endings. And that's just not true. Mm-hmm. Like almost every quest in the game that is a major quest line or a faction quest has multiple outcomes. And that's kind of why the replayability of the game that we'll get into later makes Starfield special, to see it again and see how it can play out in these alternate options that unlock. So I think as time goes on and they add to this game, this can only get better. But for me, the role playing is definitely good. I wouldn't say it's like the best I've seen in a while, though.
I wouldn't say it's the best ever, but yeah. For sure.
And I think it's definitely, they want you to earn, even with the stealth stuff, like you have to unlock stealth to even get into the hidden mode when you crouch so that they cannot see you and stuff. Because I actually made a stealth build, and to your point, Maddie, I do hear what you're saying in reference to like the certain faction quest lines where it's constructed to be a stealth mission, but the game itself, to be stealth, you really have to overcommit. And I think the last point I'll say is I think it was a conscious decision by Bethesda to not make you God mode early.
I love that personally. Yeah.
Right. I actually liked it. At first, I was upset. I think me and you, Rand, we talked about this. Like, damn, just to level up a certain skill, I got to waste another skill point to level it up. But then I was like, no, they want you to commit to the style, right?
You got to commit.
You got to commit. And then based on what we'll talk about, New Game Plus and all that stuff, it's a longer path to God mode, and I'm okay with that. It kind of synergized more with me the more I played it. It's kind of where I was getting it.
Yeah, because like when we were talking and you were like, I'm going stealth, right? And you were complaining to me how like some of the stealth stuff didn't work, and you were like, would you put your points into first? I'm like, first thing I put was I want to be able to carry more stuff. So those the first things I like immediately, like that was my first locks. Like I'm getting this because everybody talks about the encumbrance, and right from the beginning of the game, I'm like, I'm good because I'm maxed out already. I pick up and carry whatever I want. So that's I don't know. Like that's why I didn't like. Gene said you were like you role played as what was the first one you said? You role played as like,
but I was a stealth explorer though. I definitely built for stealth at the very beginning first. So I had no problems with the stealth.
I guess like the only time I've ever really role played in a game really is Mass Effect, when I was like, whatever happens, I'm Renegade. I'm picking a Renegade option every single time because my Shepard is going to do whatever it takes to save the galaxy. But for most other games like along this line, I don't really have an idea of a character I want to play as. I'm kind of like, oh, that option seems like a cool thing, I would say. I don't really have like, oh, I'm playing as this. It's just like I don't know. Maybe I'm weird like that.
No, I'm kind of
like Mass Effect was the only time I was like, oh no, we're going Renegade. And it even when I played it again and I was like, no, we're going Paragon. The Paragon one didn't seem as cool as the Renegade one.
It's not as cool.
Renegade is hilarious.
Yeah, no, Rand, I'm with you. I don't typically, I know it may surprise some people because I love role playing games, but I'm always not trying to get into this like deep character lore. Like my mind, like I set up this game in my head of like, who am I gonna do? Am I going to be the pirate? Am I going to be a courier or something like that? Like sometimes I do just want to play the game and be me. And I'm like, what would me be in Starfield? I'm like, I'm a stealth op, man. I'm just going through. Crouching on the perimeter with a sniper. I'm like, yeah, it'll be a smooth talker. And that's who I just kind of end up becoming someone. So I hear you on that, Rand. I think it's easier for games like Mass Effect and like The Witcher to role play because you have a voice set for those characters, right? And when you don't have that voice, that's where I just put myself in there. I'm like, what kind of badass version of myself can I make this time? So that's how I roll. But
yeah, I do that too.
Jens, any other non-spoiler thoughts before we dive into the thick of this story, just because I want to give us a good hour to really talk about that.
Yeah. Are we getting the companions later? I just wanted to talk quickly about the companion system, unless we're going to talk about it later.
I mean, yeah, the companions will be part of the main story, if that's what you mean. Like they're
not that like individual, just the system. And I just feel like I want to give them credit because, obviously I'm a huge Obsidian guy, and I feel like when I play the Outer Worlds, I love the attempt of feeling like I have a two-man crew, right, in Outer Worlds, and they can interject with my decisions. And I got to give Bethesda credit here. I really felt what really drew me to the game is, like I said, if I'm running with Andreja, I'm running with Sam Cole, and the constant interjections or the ability for them to talk, I thought was cool. Now, sometimes they'd want to, hey, I want to talk to you. And I'm like, bro, we're in the middle of a firefight, right? It's going on. Like, you want to talk now? Like, all right, cool. You know what I'm saying? But it felt more human element to me. And I thought they did a good job. I want to give them their flowers there because the companion system really hooked me as far as the role playing is concerned, choosing when to pick someone. Like I had a Adoring fan with mine because he don't have no problem when I do dirt, when I'm robbing, I'm stealing, when I'm pirating, like, and he holds more. And then like each of them had their own little benefits and things they can do in conjunction with the skill set. Like Cole is good with rifles. So it's like, okay, bro, I just looted this base, or we just did this thing. I'm going to give you rifles to go to your skill set and stuff like that. And then I got into the shipbuilding aspect, and I really started to appreciate the companion system more because if some people really had skills that were help with more shields, ballistic weapons, or missiles and things of that nature, it helped my overall experience towards my play style. So I thought that was cool. And it really hooked me more into it because I was in my Star Trek Enterprise, thing, and I had 4 or 5 seats, and they're in there. Oh, and last thing, I want to shout out the nuances of idle companion movement. When they're on the ship, they're moving around, they're sitting down, some you'll sleep, some will do. It just felt like my playthrough was alive. And I don't see no one giving them credit for that. And I really want to shout them out because that is what's been keeping me going, me really feeling like I have a crew of either Constellation members or people who are hired on my ship and playing with me.
It's funny you mentioned that because I didn't have that experience about them being in the ship doing whatever, because every time I got out of the captain's chair, all 5 of them would be standing right next to me. Just whatever. Every single time. Like there'd be, Sam Coe and Cora and Sarah Morgan. They'd all be right there. Be like, hey,
moving around.
They literally stayed in the cockpit with me the whole time.
Oh, but did you have the base ship though?
No, dude, I had a huge
some joint.
A huge ship with like 3 levels or whatever. But every time I would get up in the ship, they'd be right up there in the cockpit with me.
Interesting.
I'm like, okay, well they're not really doing anything. All right.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a shame. I never had that experience. Maybe because you boarded through cockpit as opposed to just board regular. And when I board regular, they'd be moving around. And then I always doing stuff through my ship or building stuff for my ship and adding workstations and stuff. And they'd be moving around and talking. And they would have interactions with each other. I would see Barrett talk to Sam Cole and be like, hey, you going to teach that girl this, that, and the third. Or Andreja will be like, hey, you going to teach that girl when we going to train her? He'd be like, hey, easy. She's not ready for your type of training, Andreja. Like,
bro, you literally would go into photo mode, pull out the camera and like view into the cockpit and the ship, and you would see me at the cockpit, and then around me would be the 5 people just standing there.
Damn. That's unfortunate.
Otherwise, anything else we want to point out in non-spoilery fashion? No burning stick.
I mean, I got more, but I don't want to dominate the conversation.
Let's pull the lid off. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you got this far, which hasn't taken much to get this far, and you want to remain unspoiled in Starfield, you don't want to see the main story. We're not going to talk side content here, just main story stuff. Feel free to tab off. Come back later. We welcome you with open arms. Let's start off with Derek Mozzarella here for the spoiler conversation, which will begin in 3, 2, 1. Hey, Dukes, what member of Constellation was killed by the Starborn in your playthrough? How did it make you feel, and did you reload a save to make a different choice of who to save? In my playthrough, I got Sam Coe killed, and it was the first time a Bethesda game actually made me feel a bit guilty about a choice I made, as I watched Cora cry over his body. Thanks, and looking forward to this discussion. Now, this was the moment for me that the main story in Starfield really hooked me. Like, this is the hook, right? Because for a while, you're kind of treading water, and you're thinking it's another BGS main story. You're like, all right, I'll do this one time, and, then I'm off to do never this again in all my subsequent playthroughs. But when this happened, I remember when I was playing during the review period, I went, no way. So I reloaded. Not because I felt bad, but I went, what if I went the other way? Like, there's the eye, and then there's the Constellation base. I'm like, what if I went to the eye? And for me, it was between Sarah Morgan and Sam Coe. And I was like, okay. My original choice led to Sarah Morgan dying. And so I reloaded and I checked, and Sam was dead. I was like, no way. So they actually, like, these are one of 4 companions are going to be dead. And that's crazy to think about because it's such a small count. And it was like there I kind of got why Bethesda was keeping the companion count low, something you and I talked about, Cog, because I was like, holy shit. Like, now I know why, because they wanted to, like, not you have 8 million other options. It's like, no, you got now 3. One's down. Now you got 3 left. So for me, I rolled with my original decision. I went and reloaded the save again, and then I went and let Sarah die. But I was thoroughly stunned by this choice. More, it was part like the story and the stakes had just risen now. But it was also like, wow, BGS just had that kind of moment of elevating what they can do with the main story, something that will be a continued theme, I feel, throughout this conversation. But Gene, I know you and I talked pretty immediately about this. Who died for you, good sir?
Yeah, I decided to stay at the the lodge, right? I stayed at the lodge, and Sam was up at the eye, and he died.
Oh,
So then I saw Korra crying over his body, and like I was like, damn, this little girl hates me.
When I reloaded my save, I thank God this didn't happen the first time, but did you guys, when you were reviewing the game, did you get the bald bug? I call it where like
yes.
You never got the bald bug too.
Oh my God, I got it all the time. And when I reloaded, I went in, Korra was bald, looking over Sam's body. He was also bald. I was like, man, this is tragic. If you see this for the first time, everyone's fucking bald in the room, man.
Well, it's kind of like when an important character dies at Cyberpunk, and you're in the car, and that character is dying, and then like his face was just like going crazy for me at the beginning of Cyberpunk, and it's like this is supposed to be like the moment. That's the pivotal moment in Cyberpunk, and it was just it was completely ruined for me. You know, you never get that back. It's a shame.
Yourself, who went down for you?
Man, I was in the same boat as Gene. It was Barrett. And for me, I just want to set the stage because you said it perfectly, Manny. Prior to that mission, I believe it's called High Price to Pay is the name of the mission.
Oh, and aptly named.
Yeah, and bro, like I remember, like, don't get me wrong, stories like, okay, we're explorers, we don't know what's going on. Hey guys,
getting the pieces of the Triforce, whatever.
Yeah, we're just picking up Triforce. Who knows what it could lead to? You know, that kind of energy, right? And I'm just like, I'm still not there yet with this story.
Yeah.
But it is not until the hunter showed up at the lodge and the way the game scaled to how powerful he was, because I had weapons. I'm like, I'm going to body you in this house. Like, you're not. And they were like, oh, no, you're not. And
you got to run.
Not only that, the tension, the fear, we got to escape. You go through that secret path that goes through the wells, and then out to New Atlantis. He destroys stuff. People are dying. The city is feeling the terror that you're feeling. You know it's on when Vasco is like, we got to go. Vasco was out. He was not about no opera fighting. I was like, yo, what's going on? And then you get to the scene and you go to the eye. And again, for me, it was Sarah really emotional about Barrett. And it hurt me. I was like, damn, he's in a pool of blood. And it was such the stakes really rose because, and then from that, I think actually prior to that point of the Starborn just appearing, I was like, ooh, okay, threat. That was what this game was missing. I didn't feel in danger until these moments, the Starborn appearing to threaten me like, okay, you don't want to listen? All right, cool. Next mission, we coming to the house. Yeah. we gonna
space is getting invaded.
yeah, you gonna give up them Triforces. I get you. I saw you enjoy it.
Let me say one thing real quick. Because you brought up clock, one of my favorite video game tropes and cliches is when the safe space is no longer safe anymore. When the save room, when you realize in the police city hall in Resident Evil 2 that Mr. X is walking around there.
In there. What's up?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna bust through the wall and come get you.
This man is really chasing me through the safe space, you know?
Well, it is the greatest feeling in video games. Continue.
Exactly. I never get tired of it, and that's why when it happened in the lodge, exactly what you said. It's like they're in the lodge. This is my house, and it's completely disrupted. And like you said, there was a lack of sense of danger. There was no better sense of danger than invading your home space. You know.
Preach. Red. I felt they was running at 60 frames per second when they were trying to get out the line. The well was in front. I was like, oh, this 60 now. But that's all I had to say. That was my favorite moment in the story. But Red, where you at, man? What happened? Who passed? What happened?
Maddie and Gene, you both said that was when the story finally clicked for you, right? Like it was like, okay. Interesting for me was like the previous mission that Cock talked about. It was the stealth mission, where you were going through the stuff and the Starborn show up at the end. Because I'm like a sci-fi nut, right? I read a lot of sci-fi books. So the whole time I'm playing the game and collecting the artifacts, I'm thinking to myself, how's this going to play out? Are we going to just basically do the trope of, progenitor species, right? Oh, like the ancient, people that first made everything. And I'm like, okay, if we do that, that'd be cool, right? But then it's like, oh no, we get a technologically advanced, culture that wants it. And I was like, oh, and the voice modulation, the ship. I'm like, oh, now you got my attention, right? Like the Leo gif from Django Unchained.
Yes.
So like from that point, I was hooked. And then we get to this mission, and I had done kind of a trade off between Sarah Morgan and Sam Coe, because who doesn't want to go through the universe with Cowboy Adam Jensen, right?
Yeah. Space
That's
Cowboy.
like, oh, get my boy Adam Jensen up in here. I'm like, I'm gonna go with him. And you know, Cog, you know this. Like, I'm a little bit of an achievement guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know, and unfortunately, the achievements were locked for our review period, which was so odd. But I knew there was an achievement for completely for completing a romance side plot, right? And I was like, well, okay, you know what, and whatever. Like, I got Sarah here. I'll start with flirting with her, and then when the option came up with Sam, I'm like, whatever. I'll have 2 in my back pocket in case something goes wrong. So I started flirting with Sam, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you really are an achievement whore at that.
Yeah, you're an achievement whore. You will have to be bisexual in this game.
So I was like, all right, I got 2 of these characters. I'll do this. And then we get to that thing, and I stayed at the lodge because I was like, no, I'm gonna stay here because Walter sounded like he needs my help, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I stay. I get up to I. Sam's dead, and at first I was like, wait a minute, is he really dead? Like, he's not really dead, is he? Yeah. And then Sarah looks at you and she's like, I hate you.
Yeah.
And that broke me, dude. I'm like, oh, we ain't doing this. I cannot lose Sam. I can't have Cora hating me. I'm like, I reloaded, right? I'm like, I'm going to go to the eye. And I went to the eye and I was like, save Sam. All right.
So yeah, what happened to the eye? I never chose the eye. I'm very curious about this.
And then I went back to in the library or whatever, and Sarah Morgan was dead, and I was stunned because that was like the main character they sort of had in all the
that's what surprised
the commercials
me,
and stuff. The leader of Constel. I'm like, what? And I'm like texting Cog. I'm like, did you get this far? What's going on? Like, Maddie, what's going? What happened? Jazz, what? I'm like, is it only because we're trying to figure out, was this the only options, or was it just based on it's always Sam or Sarah, or could there be different permeations? But I was like, all right, now it's like you had my attention before. Now you got like my balls in a vice, because now I'm like super interested in where this is going to go. Because, like I said, my experience with Bethesda games isn't that long, right? Like, I enjoy playing them, but I don't love them. And the lead up to this game, everybody was telling me, even my co-host Jazz was like, Bethesda main missions suck.
Yeah.
Don't even bother. Don't even play him. I saw Jeff Grubb on Twitter being like, if you play through the main story of a Bethesda game, you're doing it wrong. All these sort of things. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll save this main story for later or whatever. And then here I am playing through the main story, and I am utterly captivated by the stuff that they're doing. But yeah, it was Sam and Sarah for me. But I just couldn't have Cora hate me. I just couldn't do it.
I feel you, bro.
One of my favorite parts about all of that is the side quest that unlocks after with the funeral that you can attend.
Yes.
Which I thought was
very
a
touching.
Great touch.
Very touching.
Yeah, they did that well.
I hate to say it, but my biggest memory of that quest is me laughing.
Why are you laughing at the funeral?
Because they call you to the podium and they're like, would you like to say a few words? And I'm just picturing my character folding his hands, putting his head down, and they got this one dialogue option. And I had to double check. I had to bring up a playthrough to see if I was remembering it right. And I'm looking at it right now. The choice is, I'm just going to say it. Sarah didn't just die. She was murdered. I was just like, yo, who the fuck wrote that?
Yo, some of them dialogue choices is hilarious.
I was like, someone was just having fun with this scene. They're like, what if we just made you just a real prick here in this moment? She didn't die. She was murdered. Like,
the writing is fun. Everyone knows about the moment where you're stuck in the elevator with Walter, and then you're like, oh, well, the elevator is my house now. This is it. That's funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one moment in the game that I really think was the hook. Sticking with the emissary, sticking with the hunter, the late Nate writes, hey Dukes, what'd you think of the twist involving the emissary being the member of Constellation that the hunter killed? Who was your emissary? Mine was Barrett, which felt right since he was the one that brings the player into Constellation. Side note, did you guys find the hunter at the beginning of the game the first time you're in New Atlantis? He's in the bar by the spaceport, and it makes the encounter with him later feel more built up, in my opinion, which I didn't know that at all.
He's right there at the very first spaceport where you get to hire folks. So he's hard to miss when you're introduced to that mechanic when you're hiring your companions, and he's in the corner of the cafe. And I remember that because I was like, "Ooh, can I hire this super edge
Edgy,
lord
cool
dude?"
dude. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
he just starts speaking his voice modulator. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. And then I completely forgot about him until the New Game Plus, where I was like, oh, that's right, I did see him at the beginning of the game.
Yo,
That's
I never
crazy.
knew that. I never knew that. That's crazy.
I found him there because, and this is one of the reasons why I had such a hard time in the beginning of Starfield for like the first 8 hours, because I get all these missions, and the way I play RPGs is like I do them all before I move on to do something else. And all the activities they give you in New Atlantis are, for lack of a better word, lame. Like, I'm gonna go talk to this dude who's got a tree branch or whatever.
Yeah.
One of them was like, go get me some coffee. Go get me some coffee in this thing.
That's when
and
I started to get scared big time. Like I was like, oh, side quest, let's go. And I like went and grabbed coffee, brought it back. She's like, thanks, fam. He's like with the XP. I'm like,
the coffee though.
Like, oh shit.
But when you grab coffee, he's in the corner. So I grab the coffee and I see him. I'm like, who's this cool looking dude? So I go up and talk to him, and I'm like, the conversation we're having was really cool. I'm like, this dude's badass. And then sure enough, he's the one. I was like, oh, that is so cool. And then when in New Game Plus, the first thing I did when I landed on New Atlantis was went to go talk to him, but he's not there. So
he's not there anymore. That's right. Yeah, that's right.
What do you guys make of
New Game Plus? A new game for me.
Before we really get into the emissary thing, what do you guys make of the concept of the Starborn? Like, no alien life, like that. To me, that was the big question going into the game's launch. Everyone was saying, you got to do aliens, you got to do aliens, you got to do aliens. And I actually thought the concept of the Starborn, and when you find out, like in my case, it was Sarah, I was like, this is kind of refreshing. I was like, who's out there? It's us. Like, we're out there, which I just thought was this twist on the idea that, I mean, I personally haven't experienced in any media. So I thought it was kind of like profound, very different. And I appreciate the originality. But what you guys think about Starborn as like a group beyond here with the question involving the emissary being a member of the constellation?
I'm actually, what Gene is. I'm very curious what Gene thinks about, because I have thoughts. So what you thought about the whole Starborn thing?
I think, Maddie, you put it right. It's like, oh wow, who else is out there? No, it's just more greedy dudes like us. That's it. So that is like a very, very cynical and dark take, where it's like there's nothing else out there besides us, and the ambitions and the limitless possibilities of humanity and how far we will go to attain power. Right. Yeah, that's what I really, really loved about it. And also, I love the name Starborn. As soon as I heard Starborn, I was like, Dragonborn. Yeah, that's crazy.
They definitely in the room, they're like, it's Skyrim. I mean, it works.
Yeah, I was like, they did the thing. This really is Space Rim. What the hell?
They did the thing. I love it. Yeah, I mean, for me, it was like, it was cool because I think it was when you get to the NASA mission and you start to realize, oh, beautiful, like just the attention to detail, just the history, and you start to realize as humanity starts to advance and what the sacrifice was, for the grav drive, and then you start to make the link, and you're like, oh, okay, this is how this happened, and the whole Starborn thing and the artifacts and all this stuff, that's what the tie-in is. So I thought it was cool, and I thought the revealing of the hunter, the emissary, and the faces, and this whole concept of multiverse, and hey, when you go through it, are you going to be the same person? And, that I thought was very interesting. And again, when we get into New Game Plus, it really affected decisions moving forward, because there was a lead up at that very end where you're like, hey, I got to make some decisions about this playthrough and what the ramifications will be on another one. And that's where I really appreciated it. But yeah, the hunter and emissary thing was really cool. Just really quickly, who murdered who did what? Y'all body both of them? What y'all did? I'm curious.
Oh yeah. That's like, I was able to, you're talking about the tail end between these two when you're facing off, like you meet them. I actually talked my way around both of them. I was like, yo, look, like this timeline here, we don't got to do this. Come on. Like, I'm standing there like just strapped. I'm going like, come on, guys. Like, let's make a smart decision here. Like, you don't have to die. And they're like, you know what? You're right. And part of it was kind of weird because in my head, I'm like, where the fuck are you going then? Like, there's like, we're out. Yeah, there's like, we're out then. All right, see ya. And I'm like, okay. So I wonder if they show up somewhere else. I actually don't know that, but that's what I did. I navigated with dialogue, because I just, anytime I get that opportunity, to me, it's like limit testing. Like, how far are you really going to let me go? Like, can I really go to this point here and just straight up not kill the two main antagonists? people who killed my party, and how will my party react? Which Andreja was very accepting of my decision, which I thought was interesting.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Rand, what'd you do?
Oh, when I play, I talk my way out of every major fight in this game. Because I love that mechanic. I love the idea of being able to use your words to get out of any sort of violence and confrontation. I always find that really interesting because most games don't do that. Most games, it's always, we're going to solve this problem with our fist or our guns. And I like in this one was like, no, you can solve it with the words. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to solve everything with, that's one of the first skills after the weightlifting I maxed out was speech. Because I just love having that option to basically convince people to give me something that they shouldn't.
No, it's dope. Dope, I agree. And then Gene, yours, you said with both of them, with the emissary, what'd you do?
Oh, the ending choice?
Yeah.
I killed both of them because I wanted their gear. So that's it. and I made the right choice. You pick up their gear from the dead bodies at the end. I was like, hell yeah, I'm ready to do
That was a risk because Starfield, one of the weird things about it is like when you kill someone, like they don't always have the gear.
They don't always have it. Yeah.
That was a risk.
I was risky it. I was like, these are the last guys. I bet you that they're going to drop something. They have to. They're like, this game will be 0 out of 10 if they don't drop anything. But they do. Thank goodness they do.
Nice.
Yeah.
So who did you guys see when that moment happens where, what I was thinking in my head this whole time of the Starborn is I'm waiting for the helmet to come off, right? And it's someone I'd never seen before. So when the first face I see is Sarah Morgan, I popped up in my chair.
Always, right?
Yeah, I was like, wait, what? I was like, why are you're dead. You're dead as a doornail. And I love that because they literally like back to back, they ice one character and you're like, well, when you find them, they're in a pool of blood, they're mangled, you're like, they're fucking dead. And then you literally see them like 2 quests later. I'm like, wow. So to me, that was like a big moment again where it just kept that momentum of when I started off my review, I was like, oh God, I see this main story. Like it's so good. So who was your emissary, Cog?
Yeah, it was Barrett. And then the other one, I think, ended up becoming that religious dude. The religious.
It's always him.
Yeah. It's always him. Oh, okay. Yeah. So it's a religious dude, but yeah, Barrett was the emissary, and I was blown away. I was like, "What is going on? This game, same thing, man. Like this game is crazy. Like, all right, well, this is what we're doing with this timelines, and it just really now got me into the possibilities of a multiverse and these infinite possibilities of being a Starborn and what that means. So yeah, that definitely blew my mind when I saw that.
Yeah, it's when it comes to this segment here with the emissary, this is where they start to draw some more religious inspiration, right? They start to connect it to one of 3 main religions, really, in Starfield. And I'm curious how you guys resonated with that, if at all. Was this something that, to me, the only part in the story at that point where you're like making that momentum that I felt I kind of glazed over is where you have to track down that you have to like speak with one of the priests and track down this code
yes
and find this planet. I love the way they put together the mystery. Like that was actually engaging to me. But when you're like reading his journals and stuff, I'm like, so is he like an original Starborn? What was your guys' connection to that, if at all? Was that something that kind of stuck with you, or did you kind of over your head a bit like it was for me? Like, Gene, I know you said you spoke with Todd for an interview and he said that you kind of got the theme of the game on the nose. So it seems like you were maybe more connected than I was. Did you take anything away from that?
The religious part, no. The theme of the game actually is more related to the ending in the New Game Plus mode. So I'll definitely expand all my thoughts about a conversation with Todd once we get to that part for sure. The religious part was okay. I didn't. It was fine. I didn't really pay much attention to it or really thought it was that deep or interesting. It was fine. It's okay.
Ren, any thoughts on the emissary?
Yeah, I didn't really like Gene. I didn't really look into the religious factions or what they were preaching, but I could understand why in this multiverse stuff that some of them might be think of a religious aspect. Because for me, when I was like, okay, we're meeting the hunter and the emissary, I'm like, oh man, this is it, right? You're talking to these people, and then boom, he reveals himself as the priest you just talked to. And I'm like, wait, what is going on? Like, wait a minute, that's the priest. And it was like, okay. And then boom, it's Sarah. My jaw hit the floor. I was like, no, they're doing multiverse. They're doing this like, hey, even though this character you just died, you really liked her, but I'm her, but not her. And I'm like, oh, so this is where they're going. You know, like they won't explain essentially where the temples come from. And I don't think they did. If you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, they never explained who built the temples or any of that stuff, which I guess you could always say for a Starfield 2 down the road or an expansion. It was like, no, we have the two conflicting morality choices between the emissary and what she represents and the hunter and what he represents. And I'm like, oh my God, this is more than I could ever ask for. Cause I was expecting some run-of-the-mill sci-fi story. And like they started to really dive deep into the tropes. I mean, like Cog even mentioned the mission in NASA. And I'm like, okay, this is really cool. And then they pull off the trope of like, hey, the thing, you know, like the thing that we created ended up being the destruction. It's like, I believe it went along the lines of the only reason it even happened is because his Starborn self told him about it. It's like, oh, you're going to need this because things are going to go wrong. And then they build the grav jump and then it's what caused Earth to destroy. I'm like,
isn't
oh my
it
God,
kind of interesting that
cool
like
things.
the real main villain is this random NASA dude? Like, have you ever thought of that? Like, it's just that I forgot his name, like the doctor. He's kind of like the whole fate of the universe. Like, he was that
reading those dialogue, right? Those what is it? The slates and the interaction between him and the team. Continue, Maddie. I agree. I was blown away. I'm like, oh, this guy's kind of like the villain, low key.
That's like super cool. I thought because I had just at the time I was reading through like The Stand, and that's like one of Stephen King's biggest opus, like one of his best books, and it's about like a flu virus that escapes from like a facility and it goes through. And the thing is, it's like it's because somebody didn't, close the door properly or whatever. And we always think bad things happen because of, like these big personalities or something, when in reality it's just the scientist that nobody really knows doing his own thing. That I thought that was really something really cool, that it was like, no, this all happened because of just some random dude somewhere else, and his decision impacted, the lives of billions.
Killed Earth even,
Yeah. And then the question presented is like, was that a worthy trade-off? Right? Yeah. Was it a worthy trade-off? Like, was humanity's fate to be in the stars worth the billions of lives that ended on Earth? And it's an interesting dilemma to choose, because you're like, yeah, we're everywhere. Look at all the technology. Look at how we, like all these things that we've done. But it's like, what about all the people that couldn't leave Earth and died? It's an interesting moral dilemma, like who do you side with?
How there was like multiple wars already in Starfield's timeline, right? Like they talk about like xenobiology. They, the UC Vanguard storyline, no spoilers, is just all about that though, and like exploring this new form of warfare that was just born through this universe of Starfield existing. So it's a great question, because you realize that there's no winning on either side. You see Neon, and you're like, this place is a shit show. Like this is an awful, awful place to be. Like, but you have New Atlantis. Like, man, if we could all be like that, we'd have something, right? Like this would be special, right?
Yeah. If Ray was fit, I just want to add in one thing to your initial question, Manny, in reference to the religious aspect. And that's my only nitpick with Starfield, because I felt the science and the sci-fi top notch. Like bias, that's my favorite thing. I'm with Rand. Like I was like, oh, this is dope. Like I love what they're doing. Now, just on the flip side though, I did feel like I thought the Mateo character was wasted a bit. I felt like, because when you come there, there's times when he's like, hey, so what do you feel, these artifacts are doing and stuff like that? And there's like a choice between science and religion, which I thought was a cool thing. But it's like, after you answer it, he's like, man, I'm always outnumbered. And outside of that and him showing you the priest for one mission, he's really useful. I felt religion was kind of underrepresented. Like I don't feel like they had a strong enough play.
That's exactly why I didn't care much about it, because I feel like the game didn't really care much about it too.
Right,
I completely forgot Mateo even existed. Oh my God,
he's not. You can't companion him. He really doesn't have any missions. Even Walter Stroud has a mission in the constellation, and another mission to help you get you get like a powerful ship from him and all this other stuff later. But like, I'm like, man, Mateo and low-key Noel, like, what are y'all doing in this house? Especially Mateo with the religious aspect. I feel like for people who want to hear about that side, I felt like they definitely were not represented.
Do you think that Mateo was supposed to be a companion at some point and they just cut it because it would be too many members or too, like, I don't know, because I do agree with you, like, I was like, yeah, Mateo was that, like, hey, it's about faith and it's about religion and the intersection between that and science, but you don't really get to talk to him too much because you're always out doing other things with your other companions. So I do wonder if he was supposed to be more of a fixture that you could bring with you, and they just, for whatever reason, cut it or whatever.
Because even though I'm team science, I really like the debate that he represented as a character. And I wanted a little bit more of that. And it's a good question, Rand. Like, if there was stuff on the cutting room floor that they just kind of limited his role, I'm very curious about that.
No, that's a good point, because
I don't mind.
I wasn't
she
super
was sitting
interested
around
in
looking cute, so that's okay.
Yeah. She was taking my little samples. I was like, I got these little samples for you today.
The other
I didn't like she wasn't romanceable at all. Like,
I was giving her jars of all kind of life samples. She doesn't even know where it comes from.
That's a fact. I'm sorry, man.
No, I was gonna say I found Nora also kind of like not utilized at all. So it felt like that, because I think she's at. There's like one point, I think it's after like Sarah dies and you're trying to track down, I think it's the base where the Entangled mission takes place. My memory may be scattered on that, but like there's only like one point where Nora is actually relevant to the story, in my eyes, at least.
Yeah, Vladimir is more important than Mateo.
Yeah, Vladimir's awesome.
I mean, Cog?
You mean Paris?
You mean AKA Cog?
AKA Paris Lily? Like, there's different shades of brothers, man. There's different shades. Man. Get it right. We of the light skinned delegation. We love Vlad, but he does not represent us. but I will say he has my personality where he's always in the gym. He's like, yo, these squats. I gotta get these squats.
I don't get a former pirate vibe off of Vlad at all. Like, he's such a nice dude. I don't know if he's like one of those. Like, I don't know if they were kind of looking at like, you see those videos on YouTube of like former hitmen who just seem chill as fucking, but they've like iced so many people in their time. I'm like, maybe that's what they were going for. Like, oh yeah, this was once a cold hard killer, but look how relaxed he is now. He loves being here.
I love the former inmate cooking channels where they teach you how to make the food in prison, and then like these are just like the nicest, chillest dudes. They're just like, oh my god, dude, I love you.
Yep, thanks.
I brought up Entangled, and I kind of want to get into that before we really, because we kind of left to the ending a bit. Before we get into New Game Plus, I just want to get your thoughts on that mission. For those who don't recall, who are listening, Entangled was the mission where now there's multiple universes out there, and something is happening at this base, which is flipping you between two different universes. One where this base has exploded, and everyone except one gentleman is dead, and what was kind of just an accident. And the other where everyone's alive except this one dude. And they're like, we don't know where he's at. And so this mission is flipping you back and forth between this post-apocalyptic zone and this modern, abandoned facility, just back and forth. I thought this was the best part of the game. Like, there were a lot of moments where I went, wow, that's cool. Like NASA, wow, that's really cool. I had a feeling NASA would be there when I was doing trailer breakdowns. Like, they literally have a moment where they show that big lobby for NASA. And I was like... Meanwhile, the embargo's like, please don't mention NASA at all. I'm like, you put it in the fucking trailer, guys. Like, the literal first big showcase you did for 15 minutes, it was right there. It wasn't even hidden. But, there was a lot of, oh, wow, that was really cool moments, or, jaw-dropping moments. But I thought in terms of gameplay, using the universe they had built in an intelligent way, I thought Entangled, out of any quest Bethesda Game Studio has done, this was the best they've ever created. I mean, and we're talking about like, against the Dark Brotherhood and Oblivion, we're talking about that like shared house where, it's like kind of Danganronpa, like who's going to kill who in here? Like they've made some amazing quests in their time. And I think this was the best. Like I was so impressed. Technically, I was so impressed. Idea wise, it was fun to play. It was creepy. Like when you flip and then you kill these creatures and you flip back and your gun's drawn. The guy's like, whoa, what are you doing? Like we just got here. I'm just letting you in. What the hell is wrong with you? And then like you're walking along, you're like, all right, that was kind of weird. And then you flip back. It's that beautiful joyous moment of just being so fucking confused on what's going on. I loved it. So I want to get your guys' thoughts on it. Cog, you and I have really talked a lot about Entangled. Just telling people, keep an eye out for that mission. So, sir, now the filter's off. I want to hear your thoughts on it.
Bro, that's when it really started to cook. You said it best. Like going into that base and then them trying to understand what happened to the scientists, them not realizing the artifact is tied to the research that's causing all the problems that they're having. And it goes from normal environment to horror zone, and you're fighting these crazy creatures and you're trying to navigate, and then also getting them to explain, okay, what is really happening, right? And I believe that it starts to be like a little, we call it a puzzle mechanic, where you have to follow those, what is it, those light things, and you have to when you're going back and forth and utilizing those, it's almost like waypoints and stuff. It was excellent. It almost, as a fan of Titanfall 2's campaign, it reminded me of that, but even on I know my Titanfall bros are gonna come at me because like, yo, that's one of the greatest missions in Titanfall. But don't you do it, God? But I will just say it is comparable, and the way Bethesda handled it was excellent. It was a great mission, and then you had the fate of that scientist in your hand, and also trying to come back, right? You know, you had to manipulate all those different. There was like a lot of puzzle mechanics at the end where you had to try to figure your way back, but could be at the expense of this scientist and what would happen on either reality. So I thought that was excellent, and yeah, kudos to them. That could not have been easy to design. That was really well done. But I'm curious,
two totally different areas. It's crazy.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like rendering almost in a way. But yeah, I'm just curious, you know, as far as like Rand, like what was your thought about that mission? Did you enjoy it as much? Did you not like it?
Dude, my jaw hit the floor again. The first time you're walking through that thing and then you flip realities, I'm like, oh, they're doing it. I was wondering if they were going to do something like this. Because like, yeah, it's one thing to tell you that there are multiple realities and then finally getting to experience multiple realities, right? So I was like, oh, this is super cool. And I think I talked to Maddie. I'm like, bro, like, you got to get to this mission. And Maddie was like, oh, I finally did. I think it's incredible. I talked to some other people. And then finally the game came out for everybody. And then like I started seeing people talk about how it was one of the worst missions they've ever played. And I talked to some of my friends who were legit stuck on that mission for hours. I'm like, and I was like, what? I'm like, I thought it was, you know, like, I was just like, well, like they have the little things next to where you can switch. I was like, I don't know how you got stuck. But then I do feel I guess maybe the letdown, or maybe the point of the mission was essentially it's a trolley problem. Right? Like you're in control of the trolley. On one track, you have one guy tied up that's going to run over, or on this track, you have 50 people and you're in control of the lever. Like which lever do you, and it's like, well, of course you're going to choose the one and not the 50. So I'm curious if anybody actually just like, I saved the one with everybody in it because I felt to myself, I'm like, why would I save the universe with just one where it's overrun by all these? I sort of felt like this was the embodiment of the trolley problem, Gene. I mean, like, I don't know. What do you have to say about this mission?
I'm looking at the Reddit right now, and I do see people having trouble with Entangled. I'm with you all. I loved it. I think it's the best mission in the game. It was that mission where I said, okay, this is the best main quest that Bethesda has ever made.
Yes.
Yeah. Because this is so cool. I don't know if I go as far as Manny as saying this is the best like quest one specific quest. I do love the Danganronpa Clue House murder and the Dark Brotherhood. Always going to have a special place in my heart. Sure. But I think it's up there. And this is the most memorable quest. I did get lost though.
I got lost. Confession. I did.
I'll be real. I got lost towards the end, and I was like, I don't know where to go, whatever. You know, like where do I pick up this key card? But that's why it must have been so hard to design, because then there are locks and blocked off walls in one end and the other. But I really, really love the quest, and that was that was around that time when I said, okay, I actually do love this game. You know.
But like the morality choice, though, I felt like was the weakest of any of the morality choices you had to make in the game.
Because it was
which one do you save? But it was like, well, the clear answer is the one with everybody. Like at least with the other morality choices is understandable. I don't know what they were really going for here. Maybe just like I don't know.
You get the guy as a companion as with the other choice.
You
do
I
get
was
him
like,
as-
I was like,
yeah.
I don't need another companion. I don't care.
Okay.
You know
But you can save both universes.
what?
Yeah, I save both. You can save both. You have to.
Now, what? I didn't know that.
Yes, you can save both. They present it to make it seem as if it's one or the other, but there's a correct what you call it, calibrations on both realities that you could get both and have him and everything saved. That's the one I got. Now I must admit, I got a little help, but on what to calibrate. But yeah, you can save both of them.
Okay, I'll have to look that up. Okay, now
Yeah.
I want to replay it again. Holy
That's
crap.
possible. You can
Yes,
save both of them.
you can save both. There's
Okay.
three
Wow,
choices.
look at
I'm
that.
still learning new
choice.
things about this game.
Bro,
That's
this
crazy.
game is crazy, right? How crazy is this game? Y'all
About
told me
our favorite quest, and we're still learning a new thing about it. That's crazy, you know?
Yeah, you can save both realities. That's a fact. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think where we can show a lot to one another is New Game Plus. So, shall we get into it, gents?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Matt Cordova writes, "Hello, Dukes. There's been plenty of conversation about Starfield's New Game Plus mechanic. Did either of you feel that it added to the story significantly, or was it more for gameplay reasons? Personally, it made my first playthrough seem insignificant and cheapened my relationships with each crew member. I look forward to hearing your discussion." And this is actually a thought I've seen multiple times. So, Gene, I want to hear from you first, because you were telling me how much you loved New Game Plus. So I want to get your thoughts first and foremost. 4 times through, do you agree with Matt Cordova?
Yes, Mr. Matt Cordova. Here, let me tell you one thing. You are correct that it makes your first playthrough seem insignificant, and it cheapens your relationship with each crew member. That is the point of New Game Plus. The whole point of New Game Plus. Everyone's complaining about New Game Plus, how it's trash, how it's horrible. It doesn't mean anything. What's the point? and it cheapens the relationships, and it cheapens the story. That is the point. Todd Howard said that Starfield is a game about asking yourself, would you relive your life and make the same choices again, right? What makes life so interesting? What makes life so valuable? What makes life so precious is the fact that we only get one chance at it. That's it. You know. So if we do get another chance at it, it's going to be cheap. The relationship, if you go through your same girlfriend relationship over and over again, and you make different choices, it's gonna feel a little cheap. It's not gonna be as special as the first time, you know. So I do think that, and this people get on my case about me comparing it to Nier Automata. I never said that Starfield writing is at the same level as Nier Automata. I think mechanically, the New Game Plus feature and the ending feature is interesting. The most interesting is since Nier Automata, because it is using the player motivation to finish the game and the player power level to influence the themes of the game. You think about the hunter, right? Have you guys gotten to the end of New Game Plus 10, which is the maximum?
Oh no! Wow! Let's hear about this. Let's hear it.
Okay, that is part of the story. When you finish up to New Game Plus 10, guess who you become? You become the hunter. You get the hunter's clothes. That is when you finally unlock the hunter's clothes. The game is telling you have lost your humanity by chasing power, by chasing the power level, by chasing the power gain. Because you're always leveling up.
You can't reset anymore after that? You can't reset anymore after 10?
No, 10 is the max in terms of like the armor that you get and the different Starborn ship that you get.
Okay.
Actually, the Starborn ship maxes out at plus 10.
This
But
different Starborn ship each time?
You get like a Starborn ship that has like better stats, but it's really the same thing. So
Okay.
yeah, you don't get a different kind or whatever. It just moves a little faster and it shoots a little harder. That's it.
Got
Not a big deal. Whatever ship you build is going to be way stronger regardless, right?
Yeah.
But like that I think that is the point, that the chase of power is supposed to be empty, but you do max out at plus 10. So like I have phase time plus 10 now. So I can play the game in slow mo for infinite.
Wow.
Period.
Wow.
Nobody will ever move. Period. While I'm playing in my New Game Plus 10. I chase that power and I'm dressed in the hunter's clothes. I have lost all humanity. I have shed all my relationships. My relationships are cheapened. This is nothing but a game to me. You know. So that is what Starfield is trying to say with the New Game Plus cycle. You are not actually meant to do New Game Plus and feel good about it. You know. You're supposed to the best way to play the game, and the West is the best way everybody plays the game. And because you hear it, it's like, you know what? I'm just gonna stay in my new game, and I'm gonna build my farm. I'm gonna stay married to Sarah and appreciate what I got here. That is the message of Starfield. That you're supposed to appreciate what you have now because you're never going to get a second chance like you do in Starfield.
Gangster.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So that's why when I mentioned that to Todd, he was like, that's it, man. He was like, you got it. I was like, yeah, I knew I got it, man.
He probably breathed a sigh of relief when he heard someone saying that like pre-launch, like, oh, we communicated our vision. Good.
Yeah. But I guess a lot of people didn't get it because everyone keeps complaining about how New Game Plus is trash. And it's like, you know what? Like, you guys are missing the point. The New Game Plus is trash. That is the point.
I mean, yeah, well said, brother. Like, I'm glad you revealed that because it meant a lot. It tells a lot. I think for me, I love how you skip and you go right back to the lodge, right? You get right there. You go back to New Atlantis. Yeah. I love the comments like, yo, bro, what ship is that? We're not scanning. All right, come on. That
was always fun, yeah.
Yeah, like the way they talk to you when you come through with a Starborn ship and the outfit is hilarious. Even the NPCs when you walk, like, bro, where do you get that suit? Oh my God. Like some of the NPCs or whatever. So you go to the lodge and at that point I was confronted on, do I reveal myself, right? And Gene, I had a heart. I had a heart to tell him that I was a Starborn. So I'm playing still like old, like, no, I just found it.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I don't know why. But the thing what's interesting is the dialogue choices with relationships, with quests. And when you see that Starborn dialogue coming like, oh, I already know what's about to happen. And kind of skips ahead on certain things and fast tracks because you're telling them, oh yeah, this is what's going to happen, kind of a deal. That was kind of cool, kind of interesting. I will say I did some research on, and this is very, I think, really cool as far as the lot, like you coming back for the first time, is that, or the second or third new game, is the possibilities. There was a future, Oran, I want to appreciate this for your playthrough, where when I came by, like, some of them have like multiple replications of you who's in Constellation when you come back.
Oh, bro. There's one where everyone in Constellation, like it's empty. Like it's this ancient thing and there's kids running around. I'm like, this is fucking awesome.
There's one where Cora's grown up and she's Starborn and she's trying to avenge her father's death. And then it's basically like, no, I wasn't the one who killed your dad. And she's like, what? So I'm chasing the wrong. Well, it blows your mind,
That's the fun part about the multiverse because I have never run into Cora wanting to murder me. But I killed Cora's dad in my game. So it feels like that in your game, Cora is finding you guys instead of me. That's the cool part of it, right? Because she's looking out for me, and then she keeps finding you guys instead. That's crazy. That's how it feels like to me.
But yeah, I loved it. I just thought it was a really cool thing. Obviously, I love the fact that I kept my skills and stuff like that. Yeah, you lose the faction and you lose other stuff, but I just thought it was a really cool way to introduce a new game plus and to encourage replayability with more possibilities that could happen. And I think the sky's the limit was there. I'm curious to see where they go as far as expansions now that this is kind of implemented. How does that interact kind of thing? But I thought it was cool. But yeah, I wanted to give them kudos for that. I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Just the way they played with in a day and age, especially, like we have a lot of multiverses, a lot of multiple things are happening at once. To have an original take on that, to me, like even if the new game plus was absolute garbage, which I don't think it is, like that is such a tough feat to pull off. And for it to just hit hollow for some people is surprising. Maybe it's because they feel like it's just another one, but I think because it's a unique take on it, I'm very appreciative of it. So yeah, New Game Plus was definitely something I actually didn't toil in much. Like I went in and made a hard save before any Unity was occurring, right? I walked in, I thought it was really cool that I could kind of skip the main mission. I had my interactions. I played around for a little bit, but now that Gene kind of puts into focus this theme, I went back, man. So this whole time I've been hanging in save file 1.
It makes sense, doesn't it? It makes sense. The whole thing. You're not so you become the edgelord by chasing that power. You have no family. You have no face. Even you're not even human anymore, bro. Because you played up until New Game Plus 10. What even are you? You're crazy,
We talked a bit about DLC as kind of this final writing question, and we can just talk about whatever else we want to as we wrap up. Sean Kramer writes, hello, my fellow serpent worshipping brethren. I want to talk about my favorite faction in the game that doesn't really even exist, House Faroon. They are absolutely the most fascinating faction, and learning about them in the UC Vanguard questline was really fun. Of course, we meet a few other characters in Andreja's questline as well. My question is one of game design nature. Do you think it was smart of Bethesda to leave this faction out for a very painfully obvious DLC main story, instead of allowing us to explore them in the base game? I did find myself thoroughly enjoying the world building through the Freestar and UC with the way their citizens discussed the underlying politics. I just feel House Faroon being involved here could have given Starfield so much more teeth and blown the fascination of this universe wide open. What did you think? What did you make of this choice by Bethesda? Thanks, and have a, is that the Great Serpent, or are you just excited to see me kind of day?
Yo,
That's a good one.
That's a good one.
Shout out to Sean. So this was one of those parts of the game where you're going through the old House Faroon embassy. It's completely abandoned and full of bots and like drugs. It was like a Far Cry 3 level, man. Like just mist everywhere. You're like, what is wrong with these people? But as you go through the game and as you learn more, really through Andreja, you start to recognize that like they're not these crazy zealots. Like there is maybe something to this Great Serpent that everyone's talking about. And I found that surprising. Like when they pose them as just a common enemy, zealots, which honestly I barely ran into. I infrequently encountered House Faroon,
very little,
which enhanced my disappointment because Andreja feels like this door that you're opening to that side of the world, and she talks so much about like my home world. Like I don't know if you guys romanced her, but I went all the way. I bent the knee. I got married.
You put the ring out. You put the ring out.
Bro, how could you
Can
not?
Can I just real quick repeat the funniest joke I've seen about this game on Reddit, and it's a valid criticism. 1,000 planets and only 2 women fall in love with me. Sounds about right.
Yep. That's good. Yeah, so I went for her, but what was interesting about her and what really separates her as a character is when you agree to be together, she's very concerned about how her homeworld will receive this. And she's like, I feel wrong for doing this because I might be investing in something that's temporary. Like we may not end up being together forever. And you kind of have to almost, as the simp you are, convince her to suspend their disbelief and just enjoy the now. You know, let's cross that bridge when we get there, sweetie. But in all seriousness, I thought it was kind of thought-provoking because I feel it replicates for many walks of life, real life, religion, you know, families, accepting different types of people. Like how will the new man be accepted by my family, and how overbearing the values of House Faroon are. You know, in my case, I had her cap someone who was a part of that faction at the very end. I was like, it's like, it's your problem. You go handle it, girl. And yeah, she ended things there. But you see, like, to me, that was absolutely one of the best parts of the game, if you will, beyond the main story. But I just feel like, again, that's where you also feel the missed potential. Like, I want more of this faction. And I feel like Shattered Space, you got to dive into the Great Serpent. You've got to expand on like the home world of House Faroon. Like you've got to give us that type of stuff because what was there was so good. And just one last point before I pass it off to one of you guys is one of the coolest interactions I had was there where you're not supposed to know about House Faroon's values or anything like that. And so I was hanging out with Andreja the whole game pretty much since I got her. And she told me about this stuff. And so in the main story, when you go to the embassy and you find that, I think, ambassador at the bottom of the base, he starts talking. He's like, oh, wait, like I can't say anything about those values. And because I was at a particular point in our personal quest line, she's like, no, don't worry about it. Like I already told him all of that. And he reacted a different way. He's like, what do you mean you told him? Yeah. And like that was completely optional, completely missable if I never had Andreja with me, or if I just never did anything with her.
And that's
like,
why I love the companions, the way they handle it.
It's dope. Yeah, I'm glad you called it out at the top because it really is one of the best parts of the game. Like it's almost BioWare-esque, where BioWare is very quippy. Like they kind of got something wisecracking to say after things happen. But I feel like in Starfield, these companions are so invested in your personal playthrough. So yeah, House Faroon feels like a missed opportunity. Cog, go ahead.
I'm gonna circle back. Companions and back to Faroon, because you're on fire with that. Because you know what happened too on my new game plus. I went and did. I know we're not doing factions crazy, but I just got to say this one mini part. Okay. I went and did Crimson Fleet first. Did that. Get to the part early in the game because I was saving the constellation. Do you know when the mission with Barrett, you have to go rescue him, and he's, in the very beginning, you go get Barrett. It was a walkthrough mission for me because everybody was like, "Hey, what's up?" You Crimson Fleet, that kind of thing. So it goes to show you the relationships with companions and the way the game changes itself based on your affiliations and relationships and how far along you are in relationships. But back to your point, yes, with Varun, such potential here. Andrea is definitely a conduit. I feel like there is definitely untold stuff about this because they are perceived as this religious fanatical group, great serpent. All they did was just randomly kill people. And I was led to believe that. And I thought it was interesting because when you bring her through the museum, right, of the UC Vanguard, she has a totally different vision, opinion about the ideologies being spewed there. And she gets extremely political, like, okay, that kind of energy. But I will say, I feel like they are purposely withholding a lot of Varun's involvement for future discussion. It is literally a breadcrumb so you can tell future DLC, in my opinion, because there's so much potential. I want to know more about it and their whole hierarchy and the leader that they had. And a key point that you said during the relationship is her revealing like, yo, I was sent to I wasn't really down with Constellation. I was here to spy on y'all. Yeah. And I got kind of busted because Sarah found me out or whoever found me out, but they allowed to keep me. So she couldn't really go back because the fate of, failing this mission for House of Ruins, almost like a death kind of thing. I don't know if it was that extreme, but I thought finding that out was really integral. I'm like, wow, there's so much on the table here. And I love that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was really cool. I do agree with Varun being a left piece on the table. There's so much to explore there.
Gene, did you think it was a good call though, to kind of handle things that way with how much dialogue and lore is dedicated, is there in Starfield, and I think is well realized. Like, you learn about these mechs that are made for war, and you see them on planets like you'll find like old factories that produce them. They'll be disabled. So there's a lot. It's not just writing. It's kind of what you mentioned earlier about like you see these things come to life before you. Do you find this almost an intentionally missed point by Bethesda?
Yeah, it's such a tease. You go to places like the mech graveyard and the mech factory, and then like there's nothing going on there mech wise, right? Yeah. I will say in a general point, it and this is something I didn't realize until like way after I started finishing the game. It's like, wow, that's all the factions. That's it, I guess. I didn't expect that few factions. I expected at least one more. Okay. Would have been nice to have, so that's why it would have been nice to have Varun or anything else, because the UC is kind of like split up into two. There's a Vanguard and then there's also the Crimson Pirate one. But that is probably my biggest disappointment, in that we could have just used another faction quest line, because then
I think that's fair.
It would have filled the universe more.
That's fair,
especially because you have I don't know how you guys feel. We'll get into this in part 2 more, but like the Freestar Rangers to me felt like the weakest, where it's like, I would have been more okay with that if there was one more strong one. Like I felt everything else was strong, and this is just kind of the weakest link hanging on by a limb.
I feel you, and I know when we do
I know
part
the
2,
rewards though.
But I will not forget the reward. But I will say this, and Rand will appreciate this, because we are Team Sam Cole. He's the bro. If you do Freestar Collective with him, it is a completely different experience. Highly recommend doing that with him, because he has a lot of ties and a lot of things. Okay. We'll get into that, but yeah,
I didn't know that.
Okay. Yeah, that's why I said the companion system in Starfield, based on their ideologies and what they feel, it truly enhances. And I want to ask you, Gene, real quick, because you're like one of the few people I think that had Barrett as a companion for most of the thing. Like, what was his like engagement with you throughout the game? Like, did he feel, what type of insight did he give? What was his ideologies? I'm curious, because I want to run with him more now in my new game plus, because I ran a lot with Andrea and mostly Sam Cole. Those are my 2 favorites that I really had a lot. And I didn't really appreciate Barry because I lost him so early. Like I had him, got him, he died. And then he's the what you call it. So I'm like, damn. Like, so I'm just curious, like, did he offer any perspective in Starfield that you're like, oh, okay, I didn't know this? Or I thought a lot of the characters added more flavor to the game.
It's interesting you asked that because it kind of goes back to my point about cheapening the relationships. Because at this point, like my friendship with Barrett is like 10 games ago, right? So I barely remember anything. I do remember him kind of like having like a Neil deGrasse Tyson type detachment, and like philosophizing about everything, and it like you hear his speech in the funeral. It's kind of like that, but. To be quite honest, I didn't engage with the companion system that much because I play Bethesda games by myself. I always play as if I'm just a lone wanderer, version 3.0 or version 4.0. And I would lean into that in my perks. So Barrett was just mule for me to
all my companions are mule, man. Just like here's all that junk. We're gonna craft
that's
later. This is gonna be your problem. I need guns. I need armor. This is all you.
I had Vasco and Barrett like coming through for me, right? So I'm actually really interested to hear you say like that Sam Coe had so much to say during the Freestar Collective because I didn't run through it. So it's like, okay, you know what? Now you're telling me about a whole aspect of a game that I might find interesting and it might be transformative that I didn't even get to play with because I wasn't interested in it. So now I'm actually excited to go back in and try it out again,
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of I'm curious to get Rand's thoughts on this, but I think it's kind of Starfield's biggest strength and weakness is I feel like so many RPGs get celebrated for like, oh, I missed that. Oh, you played that way, and that's really good. And I'm going to say, it's going to sound a bit like Bethesda Defense Force, and I apologize, but like, Starfield's not getting that treatment. It's a lot of like, man, why'd they do it that way? Why is that missable?
Good point.
And I'm like,
good point.
The whole... I don't know if people think about RPGs.
Have you ever played a Bethesda game before? What the hell are we? What the hell are we even doing? Okay, they don't have maps. I get that.
Yes, I agree. That sucks. But I don't know if people look at RPGs the same way I do. But it's, to me, the best part about it is like you can play an RPG once, but the story goes on, and that you'll talk to someone, you'll share your story, and like we've done this show, and it's shown up multiple times again. We have all these different tales and angles and reception of that story, and the fact that there is like a, I see so many RPGs just getting squashed down because they're like, well, only 5% of people are going to see that. Like, that's the point. That's the point, is that only 5% will see that. That's what's cool. It's like their playthrough feels wholly unique. But Rand, I want to get your thoughts on some of House Faroon, potential DLC for Starfield. Did you feel a bit cheated by that?
No, not really. I didn't even really think about him until you mentioned it on Xbox 2+1, where we were like talking about it. It's like, oh yeah, the one faction's missing. And I'm like, which one? You're like, House Faroon. And then it clicked in my head. I was like, oh yeah, they are missing. And it's probably going to be, the expansion, which, I mean, some people will be like, we should have been in the main game, but you cut it out to sell as DLC, whatever. I want to call out two moments in the game.
Let's go.
That sort of like spoke to me a little bit.
Let's go, man.
And one of them has been mentioned before. I'm like a lore dude, right? I need to know the backstory of a lot of stuff. And like the world and the universe that they built in this game is fantastic, but I felt it was a little hollow at first because like you're talking to people and they're like, oh, Freestar hates the Vanguard and the Varun and what they did and all this sort of stuff, but I didn't really get it, right? I was like, okay, there's just words you're throwing at me. I don't really have an understanding of what it actually means, right? Because I'm the type of person where, like Stephen King released a new book, Holly, which has a character in it, but like that character appears in 4 previous books. I'm the type of person where I want to read Holly, but I also have to now read the 4 previous books to understand where the character started and how they transformed and progressed, right, to get to that point. So for me, one of the turning points of the game, because we talked about like how it was really slow in the beginning, at least for me, was doing the Vanguard mission and going through the museum and finally getting that lore dump of what happened in this universe and why the Freestar and the Vanguard don't like each other and what happened with like that completely like changed what I thought of Starfield at that point, because I was like, this is what I needed. This is what now I understand the like why the factions don't like each other. I can see it spelt out for me. Like I really enjoyed that lore dump, and I remember telling people I know like, hey, at least do the Vanguard right away just to get that backstory drop of like this stuff here, because I think it would help you appreciate some of the things going on. And the other thing I wanted to shout out was the first time you see yourself at the end and the decision not to have you
Love
voice
that.
your character, and then your character speaks to you. I was like, oh man, no, that is so
the
cool.
dialogue choice that goes, that doesn't sound like me, because I'm like, that's such a good one to have there.
Like, because they made such a, like, going up to the release of the game, they made a such thing like, oh, we made a mistake with Fallout 4, voicing your character. And I didn't understand because, like, I didn't play Fallout 4, but I remember people telling me, like, oh, we want your character to be silent so you can actually role play.
Mhm.
And there's like, okay, we're not doing that. So then, like, this character's silent, but you get to the end and it's you and he's talking to you. I was just like, oh man, it really hit home.
Yeah. Did you guys see that you can recruit yourself as a companion?
Yes,
I've
in
heard
one of the
that.
New Game Pluses, right? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. You find you, and he'll be like, yeah, I'll join you. And then, yeah, you got you.
Wow.
I will have to say about the New Game Plus, while I thought it was an amazing concept because it built into the core of the game. And I remember telling Maddie, I was like, bro, like, I understand, like, after you did the Emissary Hunter thing, I'm like, I know what they're doing with New Game Plus, right? At that point, I'm like, I know you're going to get the offer and you're going to go into New Game Plus and it's going to tie in, right? Which is so incredible. I do sort of feel like New Game Plus itself is sort of, maybe for technical limitations, you know, when you're dealing with the multiverse, like, why isn't some of the colors in New Atlantis different? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why isn't Sarah's coat blue one point instead of red?
That would have been cool.
Where it's like the slight differences you can get with
5+ years of update, Rand.
Well,
5+ years of update.
You know what I mean?
The leader of the Crimson Fleet is a different race and different gender.
Right. I was thinking, like, why isn't Sarah, when you walk into the thing, why isn't...
But they do that for the Crimson Fleet. The Crimson Fleet leader is a different race and a different gender.
I thought you were saying that as an idea.
I thought you were suggesting.
No, that happens.
See, yeah, my thought was like, why isn't one time you walk in...
First. He's a black woman later, you know?
Yeah, I was thinking, like, why isn't Sarah like a dude wearing the same thing so you know it's her? I was like, there's so many things you could do with the multiverse, and they sort of kept it simple. It was like, okay, these are characters that you know everything looks the same, but I still enjoy the concept of all the different permeations. And hey, you know what you talked about, Gene, about like, if you know you gaze long enough into the abyss, the abyss gazes back into you, and you become essentially what you were fighting in the first place. But yeah, like those are some of those things that just blew my mind. And by the end, when I walked through, you know, and started New Game Plus and all the lights and the universes being created or destroyed, I guess, I was like, that was one of the coolest stories I've ever experienced. I'm like in love. And but before I'd be like, oh, this is a 10, but the game has too many problems to give it a 10. Sure. But like a 9, considering where I was when I started, where I was telling Cog, I was like, bro, I don't know if I like this game.
All of us were in the beginning there. We were all there. I'm not sure at first.
Spooky 5-hour opening, 6 to 7, 8.
So that's why I get that it's divisive. You know, that's why.
I totally get it.
Even in the first podcast, remember when I said that people are going to call it as fast travel the game? You know, and sure enough, that's what people. That's
probably the most clairvoyant.
I saw the criticism coming because this game has a lot of problems. You know.
Yeah, it's definitely flawed. It's just like, you know, but once you, I feel, get it. And I think it's that moment that you mentioned, Gene, and what you mentioned, Rand, you know, when you get to the Unity and you see what they're doing, it just really resonated with me. And it just has an I could always tell because it has that addictive control over me that when I start playing, I can't stop playing. And that's when I know it's still that game. It's still that game for me. And that's where, Rand, I agree with you, where it's like, yeah, is it perfect? No, there's issues there. Like you said, fast travel. I still feel the onboarding is horrible. I feel like they just, bro. Addict told me this is how dumb I am. I'm blaming Bethesda. I didn't know that when you're in space, right? You could literally, because I'm like, damn, I got to go to a port, and then sometimes I just want to walk around the ship and do something. Do you know I did not know you could hold B in space and go walk around the ship?
Really?
I played my entire playthrough into New Game Plus, not knowing that
you could just stand up in your ship and take a little stroll.
I had bro. That goes to show you, right?
Wow. How'd you handle like crafting and storage and everything?
I would fly into a city, I would, bro. That's how I was playing because Bethesda didn't feel the need to tell me this. Like there was no prompt. So again, it goes to show you that
at the bottom it tells you that you can exit ship or
it didn't say. I remember when when you land on a planet, it's like exit ship. When you're stationary at a planet, it tells you the 3 prompts: board, dock, get up. Right. When you're in space flying, there's none of that. So I just assumed you couldn't.
You just have to assume if I can get up in the port, I can get up in space. And that's what Bethesda is trusting you. Is like, okay, if you do that once in the port, and maybe you can do that for the rest of the game. I think the game could train you a little bit better. But this ain't Dark Souls, you're not from stuff. You don't get a pass for this, So.
And what I was thinking to myself, if I didn't know that, think about how many people are playing this game who don't know any of the basic features. It's totally ruining their experience of basic. Go ahead.
You want to know? Like, I had a similar experience because you get to New Atlantis, you join Constellation, right? And then I think you were supposed to then go to the Eye, and where it would teach you how to dock and stuff. I didn't do that, like, because everybody was like, "Hey, don't bother with the main story, right?" Because I'm like a Bethesda noob. I haven't played one of the. So immediately after you get to New Atlantis, join Constellation, I went off and did my own thing. And I remember I was in a party with Attic, and I'm trying to dock on this derelict ship. I could not figure out how to dock on the ship. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, how do you do this? Like, I don't understand. Like, I'm doing everything. How do you dock on this ship? I'm like, the point would be the top of the ship. I'm trying to like fly in third person. Maybe I got to get underneath the thing to do it. And Addict's like, you want to know? And I'm like, you've heard me rage this whole time. He's like, yeah, just do this, whatever, and dock. And I'm like, oh, and he's like, oh, they'll teach you that later in the main mission. I'm like, God, I couldn't believe it. I was so angry.
Originally about that walkthrough about the history of using Vanguard and everything. That could have been onboarded, except that stuff like that and docking. The tutorials are optional in this game, which is crazy.
Yes, the tutorials are optional. You can go missing it if you play it like old school Bethesda and just go off on your own thing. I'm with Rand. I had so many of those issues, and I'm just like, oh, it's like the main quest. If you're not a main quest guy. Like that's where they bury a lot of it. There's still tons more hidden things that this game does not tell you at all. And I do feel that it affects a lot of people's experience. I know there's thousands of people, millions of people who do not know these basic things. Trust me.
That's why I said play the main quest because you're gonna learn how to DAW. You're gonna get space Roda.
Roda. I love it. Well, gents, this is great. This is cathartic almost. Just getting to talk about all this cool stuff and just combing through the story and the characters. And so, is there any closing thoughts as we wrap up here that you want to get off about Starfield's main story before we begin our transition to part 2?
Yeah, I think for me, I do want to comment on. I love the idea that they had about the unknown and how they handle it. I do want to push back on them on. I wish that the powers were more influential in the game because I like that we got them, but I don't know about you guys. Like, were you guys using the Starborn powers a lot? Like, I really wasn't really utilizing that.
I use the ones to highlight the enemies a lot.
Okay. What about you?
I could see through walls and stuff and see the enemies.
Gene, did you utilize the Starborn? I got tons of. I really don't use them. But
I just told you I have FaceTime plus 10. So I am stopping time the entire time. I go into a room with 10 villains and I stop time. I just go up to them, pop, 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 pop. And then like the time never stops stopping. And then I decided to finally stop time and all the bodies drop. I was like, I love that. I can never stop doing that. FaceTime is
using my powers.
I guess maybe like the reason I didn't use the powers that often is because it felt like a chore switching between them. Like even if you hot swapped them, it was like, let me use this one and then let me pause it and like move it up to the one. You can
add them to your quick select, dude.
No, that's what I'm saying. Even if you do, it still feels like a chore to switch in between.
I didn't know that, Gene. I'll expose myself.
Wait, the weapon you can
like on the weapon wheel. You can assign.
I had the top three. I had the top three tied to the powers. Yeah.
But that's why I just stick with FaceTime because FaceTime is the only one that's actually.
I didn't know that. That's why.
I didn't even know that.
So I was thinking the whole time. I'm like. So
you didn't even know that,
guys.
There's a
dialogue focus one. There's a dialogue focus shout or whatever the hell they're fucking called, power. And I'm like, I would love to have that, but I pause the game. equip it, talk to someone. I might use it. I'm just like, why would I do that? I'm not going to. Now I know.
I will say I didn't even know where the powers was on the pause menu. I think Maddie, you were the one who had to tell me like where the fuck they were, because you have to press up, and I was like, I forgot where that was. And then once I found out that was, I started using the powers a lot more.
Right. Sure. And that star map, we got to work on this Bethesda, this star map moving around, just like basic UI stuff is just a little weird with the. Like, I don't know if you like use the analog, it doesn't shift the map all the way. You have to use the directional pad to move up to look at all the different star systems and stuff like that. I just felt a little bit, again, just they need to make it a little bit more intuitive. And again, I think if they would have had these issues resolved, this would affect people who had a negative experience with it, because there's so many little quality of life things they could have done to improve. Yeah. But outside of that, at its core, I love this game, though. I ain't gonna hold you. I still love this game.
Easy top 10 for this year. And it's been a competitive year, so I still think that's saying something. So, gentlemen, it's been a blast. Any other lingering thoughts? I don't want to have anyone feel like they got anything on the tip of their tongue. Get it off now. Rand?
I want to ask you guys, do you think we'll get Starfield 2?
No.
Or do you think the new game pluses are essentially that?
I think when you commit to that much support, and then Bethesda Game Studios timeline, and they already said, like, we got a one-pager for Fallout 5. We got Elder Scrolls 6 next. Like, I think Starfield is the beginning of this new regime at BGS of like, oh, we kind of can't just abandon games like we used to and just let franchises sit dormant, like Skyrim. Like, like I guess you get new Elder Scrolls games, but like a new mainline one, for over a decade. Like, they just can't do that anymore. It's unacceptable in today's day and age. And Rockstar has the same problem. From Software is now knocking on the door of that same problem. So I think a lot of these developers are looking at how they can circumnavigate it. But Bethesda's uniquely positioned because you got Game Pass, part of Xbox, where your more frequent updates and sticking with something while your other team builds out another thing kind of benefits you because you get that engagement in Game Pass. And it's easily accessible, and it's kind of an easier sell for people. Like, I can download this in Game Pass and they get Shattered Space for an extra, I don't know how much it is, like $30. Like, great, I'll try it out. So I think right now, this is the beginning of that new era. So I don't think we get a Starfield 2. I don't. I think any news stories in Starfield are told in strictly Starfield. I mean, the game's already like, you need to have an internet connection to play the full game because you got to download the patch for it. So, it's already like an online based game. So just keep updating this base platform that has, from last stat, we got 10 plus million players, 7th best selling game of the year, just like Xenoverse to it. Just keep throwing content into it until the end of this generation, at least. And we'll see where it ends up. That's why, not to go on too long, but in my review, I said, like, right now I'm like, yeah, Starfield's probably my least favorite of any BGS IP, like a Fallout, Elder Scrolls. But like, with how long they're going to support this, which is going to be way longer than any other series has got, like, it could change track. It could be number one. I don't know if you could ever eke out my Fallout, but stranger things have happened.
Because I want that DLC where you delve into who created the temples, right?
Yeah, that's the other thing.
I still feel that's like a lingering plot thread that you could explore.
I will say that the temple hunting sucked. Like, the fucking game.
Fly around. Dude, the floating game. That's some of the first mods I downloaded. Shorter puzzles.
0 out of 10 for that one. 0 out of 10.
0 out of 10.
Yeah,
the first time I wanted
too slow.
I didn't know what I was doing when I first went into it.
Dude, when I walked into that, where the thing, I didn't know what to do. I walked out. I walked back in. I walked out again. I'm like, what am I supposed to do here?
0 out of 10 for that whole idea and segment. And that's how you get FaceTime plus 10. Do that again. I just went to so you're wondering, earlier I said I did New Game plus 4, but I have the FaceTime plus 10. Just went into console commands and just myself plus 10. I'm not doing that shit. Yeah. Can you imagine doing that like 200 times to get FaceTime plus 10? That's crazy. Fuck that. I'm never doing that.
It's amazing how you get from walking in front of a wall in Skyrim to that. Like, there's like a mental leap there. Like, how do we fuck this up?
Well, 0 out of 10. 0 out of 10.
Even the thing that does hurt Starfield is like, it tries to be different from, like, they changed the lockpicking minigame, right? And it's like, you should have just used Fallouts and Elder Scrolls. Like, you should have never gone and done the digipick minigame. Like, it at first it's like, oh, this is cute. And then, like, you get into the, I won't spoil where, but you get into a prison and it's like everything is locked. And you're like, oh, I want this
everything.
Chest. Oh, that's locked. Oh, I want this door.
And you just get bullshit for it anyway. So it's like, whatever. So I just stopped being locks,
Sorry, Rand, I cut you off.
Sorry,
I was
Rick.
just going to say to Gene's point about like that thing being a 0 out of 10. I also sort of feel the lead up to the story getting good takes way too long.
Yeah.
Because the beginning of the story is like, go collect this artifact, and then go get this one, and then go get that one, and then go get this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I can understand when people are playing, like, this is supposed to get good at some point, because in the beginning, it's very...
Totally.
The beginning is like it's like the beginning is like 2 missions too long to get to the point, basically.
That's fair. That's fair. I agree.
Gentlemen, this has been an absolute blast. Ladies and gentlemen who are listening, we appreciate you. We hope you enjoyed part 1 of our Starfield review discussion and spoiler cast. Part 2, we will announce when that's going to be, but same deal on Patreon. We'll put out a little thread and we'll have you write in. It'll be focused on side quests. It'll be focused on faction quest lines, and we'll dive into that side of things. So again, if you've only played that component of the game and didn't finish the main story, you can just listen to that, and it lets us kind of spread our wings a little bit more, stretch our muscles more, and get into the nitty gritty of a different component of the game. And it's a testament to how big the game is that it demands 2 parts. But
when's the Forza Motorsport spoiler cast?
Rand, I don't know if I got the hours on that one, man. I've been playing a lot of Lies of P lately.
Yeah, dude, Lies of P is so good.
Dude,
So good.
Gene, I've been seeing your tweets. Oh my God. I'm like on the same page with you. It's like, I think it's my game of the year. I really do.
Dude, I think it might be my game of the year, dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
Over Zelda, man.
Yeah.
Over Baldur's Gate. I was like, I love this game.
Yeah,
God.
it's
so...
Lies of P is so good, dude.
Yes.
I like it better than Bloodborne. I like straight up,
Wow.
I'm getting to that point there, bro, because I'm telling you.
What about Sekiro? Where's Sekiro go?
I actually don't like Sekiro that much. So
Gene and I are literally cut from the same cloth. This is scary.
Gene and Rand just broke up.
Bro, me and Gene, I have not met anyone else who like isn't simping for Sekiro. And I'm like, I played like 15 hours and I was like, I just don't like this. Like, I think it's because I'm an RPG dork. I'm like, I was like, I can't level up.
Sekiro is actually the best is because it gets rid of all this lame RPG stuff in the From Software games.
I totally see what you mean.
Yeah, we get that.
I like the jank though. I do. Like, one of my favorite games are Bethesda games, Rand. You know I love the jank.
I know.
Sekiro is mechanically perfect. I get that. So I'm not saying Sekiro is a trash game. I'm just saying that it's not my favorite from Soft game. That's all.
Agreed.
Lies of P is so good.
Yes. Maybe we'll talk about a spoiler cast for that.
The Dustin and I were talking about that. So maybe.
Okay. All right. We got our spot.
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay. Let me see what Dustin's thinking. I don't know if that's Sacred Symbols Plus or DDU, but we'll get into that later. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for listening. We'll be back with part 2. Until then, take great care of yourselves and peace out.
Defining Duke, an Xbox podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from the United States of America. The show is conceived by Matthew Mr. Matty Plays Schroeder and me, Colin Moriarty, and is written and produced by Matthew Schroeder. Matty's co-host is Barry Lord Cognito Eversley. Defining Duke's executive producer is Dustin Furman, and the show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including Defining Duke, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level on Patreon, and we're thankful for your kindness and generosity.